What's up guys, welcome to The Review Show, where today I'm talking about 3 TV shows, 3 pretty big, impactful TV shows. Better Call Saul Season 5. So Better Call Saul Season 5, we're approaching the end of this show now. The next season, Season 6, is going to be the finale. So where does this one lead us into? Well, it's setting things up for what is going to be a very interesting final season. We now have a much needed conflict in this show. It's getting way more into like Breaking Bad territory, where the crimes and gangsters and all starting to vie against one another. So one of the things that this show has always been great at is its presentation of characters. This is very much a character driven show. So you've got Saul Goodman, who is now going by the name of Saul Goodman, with his now wife, who's played by Rhea Seehorn. They are both brilliant. This show is very much about them, and in fact you could argue it's just as much about Kim as it is about Saul. Where's Kim's storyline going? Because she's always been the big question mark in this series, because this is a prequel to Breaking Bad, but she's not in Breaking Bad, and yet she's a very important character in this show, so something must happen in the final season. Now obviously most people at this point probably think, oh well, she'll be dead. That's possible. I'm not going to rule it out. I think that they're going to go in a different direction with this, but that's a different conversation for a different time. This season, 10 episodes, it does a great job of slowly building things up. One of the things about Better Call Saul is that it is a slow burn series. It doesn't beat you over the head with anything. It doesn't rush into things. There are some action scenes in here, there and there. There's one in a desert sequence this season where Saul Goodman, now linked to the cartel, is forced to do something for the cartel. All of a sudden he gets attacked, and this leads to one of the best episodes of the season, where he's suddenly trying to get back to where he's from, his home, but he's in the middle of a desert, so it's tough. There's also a lot of comedy in there. It works really well. Some of it's dark comedy at times. The acting is brilliant. Bob Odenkirk is Saul Goodman. He played him in Breaking Bad. I always thought he's one of the best things about Breaking Bad, so I love the fact that this show really gets to dive into what makes him tick, what he was beforehand. I haven't watched Breaking Bad since it was on, so I'm interested to see when Better Call Saul ends and I go into Breaking Bad, will my view on Saul Goodman in that show change at all? I kind of hope it will. I hope it'll make him a way more interesting character than what I already thought he was. But this season it ends on a big action moment where a certain character is being hunted down, but he has to fight for his life, and it sets things up for the final season. What's going to happen in the final season? I believe the final season is going to be an extended season. I think it said it's going to have 13 episodes instead of 10. Obviously there's only so much they probably can do, because it does have to fit into the events of Breaking Bad somehow. You've got all these characters who are in Breaking Bad, who are establishing where they're going to be in Breaking Bad. How exactly are they going to line up? Is it going to be smooth? Is it going to be forced at all? That's one of the issues with prequels, so I'm interested to see where it goes. But yeah, on the whole, Better Call Saul Season 5, another great season of TV, a damn near perfect season. From one TV show to another though, this one, Homeland Season 8, actually is the final season of Homeland. 12 episodes. Carrie Matheson in the last season was taken capture by the Russians, held there for I believe like 6 months or something like that, returned to her country, and now everyone's looking at her like they did with Brody in the first 2 seasons. Can she be trusted? Has she defected? Has she turned on them? Because perhaps coincidentally, she's lost half of her memories from that time period. We don't really know what happened to her in that time. So this season it sets up a really interesting storyline, of one that's actually came true in real life, in that it's all about finally establishing peace with the Taliban. And while this show was going on, while the season was going on, it was all about the President of the United States coming to a deal with the Taliban and the local government to try and establish some sort of peace to finally get the American troops out of there. Well, while this was happening, in real life, that actually happened. So, yeah, that's really interesting. Homeland's always had their eye on things, it seems. They've always been aware of what's going on in the real world. They've always managed to come up with storylines that are really like relevant and important, even though obviously the way things are produced, the show's actually coming out later than what they originally wrote it. So it's interesting how strangely relevant the show still is. But this season is a good season overall. I don't think it's one of the best seasons, but it's not one of the worst seasons either. Personally, I think Homeland has been great throughout. Yes, it's had high and lows, but I don't think it's ever been bad. This season, it really does focus on the two main characters of Carrie Matheson and Saul Berenson. And I think it does a really good job of giving them strong motivations to highlight just where their careers have gone, where their lives have gone, and has it all been worth it? What do they want to be remembered for? Are they good people, or have they been doing good things? It does a good job of exploring that to an extent. And I don't want to talk about how the show ends, but the show ends, it's fine. I don't think it's a brilliant season finale. I don't think it's the best way the show could have ended. In fact, one of the problems I think Homeland's had with so many of its season finales is it kind of just peters out. And a lot of the storylines, they just kind of stop, or they become less important, less significant, and in favour it goes towards the characters. So the season finale, I don't think is the most dramatic or impactful season finale ever, but it does give the closure to the characters. It does establish what these characters are going to be up to, what happens to these characters, and I think both of these characters get a suitable end. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what matters most. This is a thriller drama series. There are some thriller moments, there are some action moments, there are a lot of twists and turns and surprises. It does at times feel like a season of Homeland back in like season 1, 2 and 3, because it has returned to that storyline. It also continues the storyline from season 4, my personal favourite season of Homeland, which never really got wrapped up until now, so I thought that was great. It brings back characters from past seasons and across the show. It does a really good job of just bringing everything together. And you know what, this is the final season of Homeland, but there is room for more if that's something they want to ever explore. Maybe it doesn't have to have Carrie Matheson, but they could totally continue this show. And yeah, overall, good. I liked it. Final show I'm talking about today is Westworld Season 3. So Westworld's always been an iffy show because the first season was good. The first season was like the talk of the town when it came out. Everyone was talking about it, everyone was predicting things about it. They had lots of twists and turns, lots of surprises. There was lots of theories surrounding what was going on. Then the second season came out, it really amped up the action, it amped up the thrills, it dragged things out a bit too much. And it got much more mixed results, and it also dived into much more like fantastical science fiction towards the end of the season, I would say. This season feels like a reboot of sorts. It's no longer about the robots or the androids or whatever you want to call them. It's no longer about the artificial intelligence quite so much. Instead, this season takes us off the island, away from Westworld, and into the real world. Now the problem here is that the real world isn't at all what I expected. And it's not necessarily say that's bad, it's just it feels so disconnected from Westworld. Because here's the thing, Westworld is super interesting, it's super fantastical and science fiction. It's a fictionalized Western world in which you can go and live in and experience life at the Wild West. But there were always hints of like what the real world was like, but the real world was always established as like almost grounded. It was like near science fiction future kind of thing. Now though that we're actually seeing it, it turns out no, that's not the case at all. It's a cyberpunk world. But it's a cyberpunk world that can't go full cyberpunk because then that would be jumping things too far. So you do have like flying vehicles, you've got like these cyberpunk characters who have like monikers on their bodies and so on, and there's like this app on their phone and everything, and weird like technology all around the place. So it's weird how this is now just a cyberpunk TV show. It's not bad, it's just odd, because it's not at all what I thought this was. And it's interesting to note that Westworld is from the makers of Person of Interest. Person of Interest, a great TV show I fully recommend you check out. This season takes a lot of influence from Person of Interest, so much so that it's actually got a very similar, if not the same story as Person of Interest, only it's looking at it from a different angle, a bit of a twist. And As someone who's seen Person of Interest, a lot of what Westworld's doing didn't feel all that original because of it. So basically, it's got this big AI who can predict things into the future, can predict what the fate of the human race is going to be. And basically that's what can happen in Person of Interest, except it's more focused on crimes and what people are going to do and trying to prevent that. So it's doing very similar things, just from a different angle, and that's a problem. The other problem is that the characters. The only characters that really return from the first 2 seasons are Bandy Newton, Evan Rachel Wood, Jeffrey Wright, and there's a couple of others. You've also got Ed Harris. So those characters return, but they're now outside of Westworld. They're trying to find new things for these characters to do. The problem is they're kind of losing the point a bit. Wasn't the whole point that there was going to be this revolt? Wasn't it going to be the androids fighting back for their freedom and so on? So I think this season does struggle at times to make the characters still feel relevant. Ed Harris, for example, spends the first 2/3 of this season trying to handle what happened at the events of the last season. It spends a long time with him just figuring things out, and he was one of the coolest, most interesting characters, and he's instantly become one of the least interesting, least cool characters. And then I absolutely hated what they'd done to him by the end of the season. So much so that I'm not looking forward to the next season at all. Evan Rachel Wood, they fixed her character from the last season, I think. In the last season, her character was reduced to being this violent, aggressive freedom fighter, essentially. This season, they've gave her a much more nuanced story, much more focused determination, a much more focused goal. And it's easy to root for her. She's a very cool, likable individual. New character Aaron Paul is somewhat interesting. Great performance from Aaron Paul. There's a lot of flashback stuff about him. He can't remember what exactly is going on. We get certain ideas of what's going on, and then it's suggested maybe he's not remembering it quite how it was, and there's more to his story as there is. In many ways, he's the main character this season, and he's a great new addition. Bandy Newton, trying to get back to her daughter, trying to get back to the events of what happened in the season 2 finale. That's fine, it gives her a goal. But so often enough, this show, it just feels like it doesn't quite know what it wants to do with the characters. It feels like it's trying to be something that it wasn't to do with the first 2 seasons. It's got an identity crisis, basically. It doesn't know what type of show it is anymore, and that's a problem. And I think from now on, it's going to stick to this cyberpunk world thing that it's got going on, which feels a bit derivative, it feels a little unoriginal, and it's not quite as interesting as the Westworld story of the first 2 seasons, and it doesn't seem to be what I thought the natural progression of the story was going to be based on the first 2 seasons. It seems like it took a different turn with things. Rather than being about an android revolt, rather than being about freedoms and equality and so on, it's going in a different direction. Not necessarily a bad one, just not the one that I think it should have went. And then you've got the other problem, is that this season really does amp up the action. There's some great action scenes in there. But then by the final 2 episodes, it just becomes an action movie, essentially. It loses the plot in many ways, in that it just constant action scene after action scene after action scene. And yes, some of them are good. In fact, there's a really good one in this second last episode, but by focusing so much on the action, it kind of loses its nuance, it loses its smart brains, let's say. And yeah, it just feels like, again, it's got an identity crisis. Is this an action series? Is this a science fiction series? Is this a drama series? It's like the makers of the show don't really know what they want to do with Westworld anymore. And they're trying to push it into one direction while still also trying to maintain what it was, and it's not really meshing very well. But overall, Westworld Season 3, it was okay. It had its moments. I think the first half of the show was really quite interesting, the way it was establishing things and mysteries and keeping you thinking on what's the ultimate goal of these characters. It's just a shame that when it started to answer them, it kind of resorted to action, and the answers and reveals weren't all that satisfying. But those are my reviews of those 3 shows. Let me know in the comments and feedback down below what you thought of those shows. And until next time though, you should go over to Twitter and Instagram, follow me at _Grant Burton, subscribe to my channel as well to get more content like this. Thanks for watching.